All right, Jason, we're back. It's
Yes.
episode 3. We survived the first 2. What do you know today?
You know, I think today, Brent, we're going to talk about product damage and specifically in conveyance and flows and how to work around it and plan systems appropriately so you can reduce damage and increase your yields.
Sweet. Who do you think this conversation applies to? It's a lot of cleaners and processors, but probably also those guys down south that deal with pulses quite a bit, hey?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot of those systems down south, when we're specifically designing them for pulses, whether it's peas, lentils, chickpeas, beans, you know, one of the things that we really pay a lot of attention to is how fast we're moving it and the deadheads we're going to hit along the way when we're designing it. And you know, they have a longer grow season down there and things seem to be drier, and drier is sometimes bad.
For sure.
Especially when you're moving grain.
Yeah, like if it's drier, what is it, Jason? It's more brittle, it's more subject to
Yeah,
splitting and
you're
breakage.
you're gonna have breakage, you're gonna have splits, you're gonna have brokens, and in the end, it just hurts their bottom line.
Cool.
And so when we're designing systems, we want to move things gentle. We want to move it as slow as we can with still good rated capacities.
Sweet. Well, let's hop into it.
Yeah.
As I said, you guys know from the last couple of episodes, I'm the big farm guy. Jason's the cleaning and processing guy. I definitely put some gentle handling processes and systems in place, but I'll be honest with you, Jason, you've probably forgot more about gentle handling than maybe I've learned or built. So I think every drop has a cost, every sharp turn adds a stress, and every extra pass risks quality. So what is the first thing that you want to do? It's probably mapping it out, right?
Yeah, you know, here again, it's, you know, I'm going to use this word often as much as possible, which is process. And it's, you know, when we're laying things out, there's a cheaper way to do things and a more expensive way, which is, you know, drag systems versus augers. So, you know, when we're designing handling systems for cleaning plants and processing plants, one of the key things is what are we trying to do and how do we reduce the amount of damage.
Sure.
So, you know, when you look at an auger system versus a drag system, quite a bit difference in cost, but so is yield. So
yeah, like using an auger once to load a truck, probably not a big deal. Using augers for, 7 steps in a process or cleaning, it's kind of like death by a million cuts, right?
100%. I mean, if we look at, I'm going to say peas for an example. I mean, dry peas in the grain world is 16%. Let's face it, not many people, especially down south, get that lucky. They're probably harvesting them at 10%, 12%.
Sure.
So they're losing quite a bit of moisture, which will just equate to damage when they're running through their system.
Cool. So, I mean, for the guys that don't deep dive into this, aside from just auger versus conveyor for gentle, whether it's our engineering team at CanSeed, other process experts, other guys that deal with pulses a lot, what are some points that they're constantly looking at in their system, in their plants? I know one of them is reducing free fall. We have flow suppressors. Guys have bean ladders and bins. Talk to us about reducing the fall breakage.
Yeah, I think that goes into the planning side, and when you're sizing and depending on how you're setting your system up as far as the leg height and how many flow retarders do we need in that spouting to slow it down to reduce the deadhead smashing, I call it. But there's lots of times where we'll put 2 flow retarders in a spout versus 1 just because we're over that height. You're right, talking about bean ladders. I know we just put some in a plant just west of the city, a couple bean ladders for peas specifically. Didn't want the breakage, so it just slows it down when it's dropping 70 feet. everything's gonna break.
What, like, is there a rule of thumb for a couple of those things, or does it really just depend on the site and you got to measure the drops? What are some of the things that you look out for when you're doing the design?
Yeah, I don't know if there's anything hard written. You know, I always look at, you know, when you're have a leg and a leg's 80 feet in the air and you're dropping pulses or anything, but specifically pulses,
Yep.
that kind of height. I mean, you want to slow it down as fast as you can to reduce that weight or like drop. So
Yeah, and I think the other point is cushioning it with product too when
100%.
you throw it, right?
Like,
so
when you start first loading a bin, you know, yeah, the first ones might get damaged, and each time it'll get less and less and less. But I mean, we're trying to reduce that right off the get-go.
cool. To talk about is probably like controlled velocity on some of the drag conveyors and stuff. One of the things I had to learn, you know, getting into the industry 6-7 years ago was, you know, the legs, the bucket elevators that we use, we can only slow them down a certain amount to be able to throw. There's a secondary option, which is easy dump, that I want to hear more about from you. And then the other thing I want to hear about from you, Jason, is, you know, feet per minute, you know, oversizing conveyors, slowing them down. Take us through kind of how you look at that.
Yeah, you know, there's a number of things that you have to look at and consider when doing this, right? Which is either it's a drag or a leg, either one has to run at a certain speed before it starts backfeeding. So you will want it to throw, but you know, I know specifically when we're running pulses, we try to maintain a certain feet per minute. And there's lots of times we're even selling against somebody, Brent, and it's like where the customer comes to us and says, you guys are 20% more money. And I say, I want to see the quote. I don't care about the number, but let's dig into this, because, you know, there's no way, if we're quoting apples to apples here, Brent, that we can be that far off. In a lot of cases, it is that they're running a smaller drag, but fast. And they're going to have nothing but damage. And it just comes down to steel costs money, right? So if we're offering a bigger system, there's a larger cost to it. You know, if they want a smaller system to run fast, we can definitely do that. I don't think it's typically the right solution. You know, even going, you know, even looking at other things like bucket elevators and stuff, I mean, there's a normal speed that, you know, I would say is more for cereals or oil seeds. And then, you know, one step up is gentle handle, you know, which is we're going to run a little bit slower in it. The capacity is going to come down. And then there's one more step from that, which is easy dumps, which is not throwing, it's dumping. So there's a number of things that we can do to reduce the amount of damage, especially when you're elevating and throwing. Because a normal bucket elevator, you're throwing good grain against the head section, you know, the head section of a bucket elevator, and then spouting it down.
Without just calling up Jason or Brent, what are the things that we should look for on our quotes? Like if we're in the north and we're running a lot of cereals, probably not as important. Obviously, still you want to, you know, make sure that it's a decent product and not crazy fast. But if I'm getting like drag conveyors quoted for pulses, is it like the size of the box? Is it the feet per minute? What are the things I should look out for?
Both of those. I mean, you should look at the drag size. It should be listed on the quote, whether it's a 16 inch by 16 inch or 12 by 12 or whatever it is. Lots of times there's feet per minute listed on there. If not, you should be asking that question and the horsepower, right? If you look at running a bigger drag and you can reduce the amount of horsepower versus having a smaller drag and increasing your horsepower, which is moving faster. So there's a lot of things to really look at and understand there when you're sizing it. But when you're getting multiple quotes, and I firmly believe any smart business person should get firm numbers from multiple places, and just making sure that you're getting the system that will last for you and getting what you need. we do this day in and day out. Our customers do this, once, twice, 3 times in a lifetime. They need our help and support doing it, and you just got to be honest with them and go through it and guide them.
Whoever you're dealing with, make sure they have some experience, make sure they can give you references, and make sure that they've had successful projects and they have a process that they're using to hit your results that you want to get, right? If you have a cleaning plant with multiple cleaning steps plus a processing plant with multiple additional steps, you might have that product being handled 7 times, 10 times, 12 times, 15 times by the time it's an end product, right? Now that we've talked about conveyance though, let's talk about cleaning it. One of the big things is you can handle it really gently, but every time that you put it through a machine, there's going to be more friction, there's the possibility for more breakage. So that comes out to, you really want to clean the product once and you want to clean it right.
Yeah, and I think that's where sizing equipment appropriately, that you don't have to rerun things, and you're getting, that each cleaning step is doing the reduction that it's meant to do, right? And the less you handle it, the less breakage there's going to be.
Totally. One of the things you can do to eliminate breakage as well is color sorting, Jason. So, instead of getting to the point where you're at 98 or 99 and cleaning it again, losing more product, having more breakage, there's that finishing unit, which is that optical color sorter. Obviously, it's not new to the market. It's went from not a thing to huge the last 10 years, 15 years. But, how do you see that as protecting product?
I actually just had a call on Friday with a customer running black beans, and their end customer needed a 99.9% pure product. And some of the rejects that they were trying to take out of the black beans were so close to making grade, not making grade. And, this goes back to the even earlier part of this conversation, Brent, which is the efficiency in cleaning. So I basically told this customer that the sorter is maxed at what we were trying to do by a reduction. They were putting in 8% rejects. Our sorter typically is sized with 4%. On single pass, we were going from 8% to 0.05, but they needed better than that. So, I had to have a honest, hard conversation with this customer saying, you have to re-clean this, or, to make the grade that they're trying to make. Customer wasn't overly impressed. Luckily, the sort ended up being good, but if it hadn't, they would have put it through their full cleaning plant one more time and would have had another 20% loss.
But it comes back to planning and, to use your favorite word, Jason, to process, right? If you're putting in a new machine, have somebody out, whether it's CanSeed, whether it's another dealer, it's the same process regardless, but make sure that you walk through exactly what your incoming spec is, what your outgoing spec is, what are the products, what are the capacity, what are the guarantees that you need to hit. Make sure that you're working with a team that's qualified and, follows a process to produce predictable results, right?
100%. It comes down to, and that's the planning stage that we go through, Brent, which is each system, sometimes it's painful, but there's a lot of questions that need to be answered up front, so we're not answering them on the backside.
Totally.
Which is, why am I not getting capacity? Or, we should never be having those conversations because we did so much of the planning up front.
Definitely. Cool. I think that's pretty much all that we have. I mean, the biggest thing that we wanted to talk to you guys today was, how do you avoid breakage? We're going to have lots more on cleaning and processing as we build this out and get more questions and more direction for you guys. We want to help you guys build facilities that protect margin, that maximize throughput, and I think this was a good, first start on the cleaning and processing side of things, Jason. So
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, thanks guys.
Thanks.
We'll catch you next week.
Bye.